He walked into the gym like he didn't belong there. Wrinkled clothes, second-hand gloves, a last name that made no one offered him a smile. Only stares, silence, and judgment. But just when it seemed like the past would bury him too, someone else walked through the door. Someone whose presence stopped the gym cold. Someone no one dared to question. What happens next doesn't just shake the walls of that old boxing gym. It rewrites a legacy, silences every doubter, and reminds us all, you are not your father's mistakes. You are your own fight. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love powerful stories of redemption and second chances, subscribe, because tomorrow at 6 p.m., we've got another one waiting for you. He walked into that gym like he didn't belong there, and everyone made sure he knew it. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle as it closed behind him, muffling the honks and sirens from the street outside. The air was thick with sweat and metal, the scent of iron mixing with the dust that clung to the walls like memories. Boxing gloves hung from hooks like relics. Every inch of this place had been soaked in blood, dreams. Miguel Rangel stood there, still, with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a pair of faded gloves hanging from his fingers. Gloves that weren't his. They were his father's. Arturo, the Lion, Rangel. Once a warrior in this very ring, now just a name that made men flinch. He looked around, eyes darting to the punching bags, the ring, the staircase that creaked under the weight of men chasing glory. He didn't flinch, even though the glances were already cutting into him. Not just the stares, the whispers too. That's him? No way. Why's he here? Doesn't he know what happened? Behind the front desk sat Rick Donovan, gray-haired, wide-shouldered, face carved from disappointment. He didn't stand. He didn't even blink. "Name?" he asked, tapping a clipboard with a chewed-up pen. "Miguel," the boy said. "Miguel Rangel." The pen stopped moving. Silence fell like a hammer. The kind that doesn't ring, it echoes. Rick leaned back, arms crossed, gaze sharpening. "You Arturo's boy?" Miguel nodded once, jaw tight. Rick stared at him. For a second, something shifted behind those eyes. Not shock, not sympathy. Something colder, something like shame. "You're not on the list," he said. "I'm not asking for special treatment." "Then what are you asking for?" "A chance." Rick hesitated. Then he stood, leaned in close, and lowered his voice just enough for only Miguel to hear. "Your father died right there," he said, pointing toward the center of the ring. "In front of everyone, and no one's forgotten that." Miguel didn't move. "Neither have I." Someone snorted nearby. Tommy Cruz, the gym's star. 19. Fast, loud, arrogant in the way only golden boys can be. He was wrapping his hands, watching the exchange like it was a comedy set. "You think you're him or something?" Tommy said, laughing. "You think those gloves make you special?" Miguel didn't answer. He just tightened his grip on them. "You're cursed, man," someone else asked. "Bringing bad energy in here," Rick sighed. "Come back next week. Maybe." Miguel's eyes didn't blink. "I'll be back tomorrow." And he was. He came every day. 6 a.m., first to arrive, last to leave. He cleaned the mats, washed the towels, shadowboxed in the alley when they wouldn't let him inside. Sometimes he sparred with the wall. Most times, he sparred with himself. Camila saw him first. She worked at the diner across the street, knew Miguel since they were kids. She watched him from behind the counter as he practiced footwork on the cracked sidewalk, moving like someone who didn't know how to. One morning, she brought him coffee. "It's not much," she said, handing it to him, "but it's hot. That's more than I usually get." "I don't want somewhere else," he said. "I want here." It was where his father bled, where he fell. If Miguel was going to rise, it had to be from the same floor. One Wednesday afternoon, Rick held an open sparring session. Anyone could. Miguel entered the gym like always, but this time he didn't stop at the bench. He walked straight toward the ring, tossed his bag under the ropes, and started wrapping his hands. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to silence. Rick didn't say a word, neither did Tommy, who was already in the ring, bouncing on his toes like a show dog, waiting to... "You sure you want this?" Miguel nodded. "I'm not going easy on you. You never have." The bell rang. Miguel's stance was solid. His eyes were focused. But the moment Tommy struck, it all unraveled. His footwork collapsed. His guard dropped. The punches came fast, clean, and brutal, one to the chin, one to the ribs, one to the pride. Miguel hit the canvas like a secret hitting daylight. But he didn't stay down. He stood, slow and shaky, blood at the corner of his mouth. Again. Another round, another fall. Again. When Rick finally waved it off, Miguel looked like he'd been chewed up and spit out by regret itself. "You're done," Rick barked. "Get out of my ring." Miguel staggered to his feet, eyes dazed, but his voice was steady. "Please, just one more." Rick slammed the clipboard on the table. "You don't belong here." Miguel looked around. No one met his eyes. No hand reached out. No voice defended him. Except Camilla's, from the back. "He does." No one listened. That night, Miguel sat on the steps outside the gym, ice pack pressed to his face. Camilla joined him, silent at first, then asked the question she'd been avoiding for weeks. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer right away. "When he died," Miguel said finally, "people stopped saying his name, like he never mattered, like he embarrassed them. I remember watching his funeral on TV, not one word from this gym, not one trainer showed up. They buried him and moved on." He looked at her, "But I didn't." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "They're scared of you." "I know. They think you'll die like he did. So do I." And that was the truth. Miguel wasn't afraid of being hit. He was afraid of becoming a story no one wanted to remember. Inside the gym, Rick sat alone in his office. A letter sat on his desk, unopened for days. He'd recognized the handwriting the moment it arrived. Thick, confident, familiar. He opened it. One sentence typed in all caps. "If that kid's anything like his father, you owe him a chance. S." He read it again and again. Rick turned in his chair, looked at the photo on the wall. Arturo Rangel, mid-punch, sweat flying, face like thunder. "I did owe you," Rick whispered. "I just didn't know how to pay it back." The next morning, the pit was louder than usual. Tommy was showing off for a camera crew, barking orders at a younger kid, acting like the king of a kingdom made of sweat. Then the bell rang, but it wasn't the ring bell. It was the front door. Everyone turned. A man walked in, slow, steady, sunglasses on, despite the shadows inside. Leather jacket, gray stubble, face that had lived more lives than it showed. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. Rick stood up. "Stallone," he said, voice cracking slightly. The legend nodded. "I heard there's a kid here trying to fight ghosts. He thought I'd take a look." No one moved. No one breathed. Miguel stepped forward, heart pounding. Stallone looked at him and smiled. Miguel had never seen someone silence a room without... Stallone didn't need a spotlight. He brought it with him. He walked slowly across the gym, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. Fighters froze mid-punch. Trainers stopped mid-shout. Even Tommy Cruz, always the loudest, stepped back like a schoolboy caught cheating. Rick met Stallone halfway, eyes darting toward Miguel like a warning. "He's not ready," Rick muttered. Stallone didn't even look at him. "Neither was I." The words hit heavier than any uppercut. He turned to Miguel. "You got heart, kid, but heart won't keep you standing." Miguel swallowed hard. "Then teach me what will." The gym stayed frozen. Everyone watching, everyone listening. Stallone cracked a smile. "You sure you want that?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Stallone nodded once. "All right, let's begin." No announcement, no ceremony. Just a legend walking toward the ring, rolling up his sleeves like he was late for a job he used to love. Rick said nothing, but he didn't stop it either. Training began the next morning, before the sun. No crowd, no cameras, just Miguel and Stallone on the cracked pavement behind the gym, where weeds grew through cement and stray dogs wandered between trash bins. Miguel expected combos, gloves, pads. Instead, Stallone handed him a sledgehammer. "What's this for?" Miguel asked. Stallone pointed to a giant tire leaning against. "Hit it 50 times." Miguel raised the hammer and brought it down hard. Once, twice. By 20, he was gasping. By 40, he was trembling. At 50, he collapsed. Stallone didn't blink. "Now run around the block twice." Miguel looked up, sweat pouring down his face. "I thought we were boxing." Stallone knelt beside him. "This is boxing. You think it starts in the ring? It starts right here, with pain, with doubt, with voices in your head screaming to quit," he paused. "And if you can't shut them up out here, they'll eat you alive in there." Miguel got up, ran, came back, hit the tire again. Day after day, it continued. Sledgehammer, run, shadow box, repeat. People started to notice. The kid wasn't just persistent, he was changing. His punches had rhythm now. His footwork had flow. His eyes didn't dart anymore. They locked in. Even Tommy noticed. He didn't like it. "You really think Stallone's gonna make you into something?" he spat one afternoon. "He's not your savior, bro. He's an actor, not a fighter." Miguel didn't respond. He just stared through him, calm. Tommy stepped closer. "You think this ends with you in the ring?" "It ends like it did for your old man. On the floor." Rick pulled Tommy back before it got worse. But it was already worse, because Miguel had stopped fearing the past and started daring to rewrite it. Inside Rick's office, tension boiled quietly. "I didn't ask him to come," Rick said. Stallone leaned against the doorframe. "Didn't have to. This place has rules. This place has ghosts." Rick froze. Stallone walked over to a photo on the wall. Arturo Rangel, arms raised in victory, teeth bloody, eyes burning. "He died in your ring, Rick, and you buried him twice, once in the dirt and once in your silence." Rick sat down. "You think I don't know that?" "Then do something about it." Rick looked away. He wanted too much, wouldn't stop, wouldn't slow down. Stallone nodded. "And now his kid wants the same thing. But this time," Rick said, "if it ends badly, it's on me again." Stallone's voice dropped. "Then don't let it end badly." Rick didn't answer, but the next morning when Miguel showed up at 5 a.m., the front doors were already open. A small gesture, but it meant everything. Training shifted gears. Now Stallone pushed harder. "Again! Hands up!" "Breathe." Miguel trained until his muscles shook, until he tasted metal, until his vision blurred, and the voice in his head begged him to quit. But he didn't. Because for the first time in years, someone believed he could be more than a tragedy. One night, after hours, Stallone took him to the ring. Empty, silent, sacred. "Take a look around," he said. Miguel scanned the ropes, the worn-out floor stained with story. "My father died right there," Miguel whispered. "Were you here?" He was winning, but his heart wasn't. He hid it, told no one. Miguel turned to him, shocked. "No one knew?" he asked. Rick suspected. I begged him to stop the fight. But Arturo, he wouldn't walk away. Pride's a dangerous thing. Miguel's throat tightened. "So it wasn't just the punch?" "No," Stallone, "but that punch, it finished what his silence started." Miguel sat on the edge of the ring, gripping the ropes. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because we were ashamed, and because we thought you were safer not knowing." Miguel stared into the dim gym lights. "I'm not like him." Stallone placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, you're stronger." Outside, rain started to fall, tapping the roof like slow applause. The next morning, Rick approached Miguel during warm-ups. "Come with me." They walked to a storage closet Miguel had never seen unlocked. Rick opened it. Inside was a locker. Number 17, his father's old. Rick stepped back. "It's yours now." Miguel opened it slowly. Inside were his father's old wraps, a championship photo, and a folded note. He opened it. Just 4 words. "Never fight with." Tears welled up, but Miguel didn't let. He just nodded. Later that day, Tommy challenged him in front of everyone. "You want in? You want respect? Fight me. Exhibition this Friday. Show us what you really are." Rick waited for Miguel to decline, but Miguel didn't blink. "See you Friday." Word spread. The pit buzzed like it hadn't in years. The ghost son was stepping into the ring, and no one knew how it would end, not even Stallone. Friday came like a storm that had been building for years. The pit hadn't seen this many people since Arturo Rangel's last fight. The bleachers creaked under the weight of anticipation. Old fighters came back, some curious, some afraid, some ready to bury the past once and for all. Miguel sat in the locker room alone, wrapping his hands slowly. Stallone leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes steady. Miguel didn't look up. "I've been waiting for this my whole life." "That's not an answer." Miguel paused, tightened the wrap around his knuckles. "I'm not nervous for the fight." "I'm nervous it won't be enough." "Enough for who?" Miguel didn't reply, but they both knew the answer. The ghost in the ring, the voice in his blood, the weight of a father he never really knew. Rick entered, holding a folded robe. It was Arturo's, red and black, worn but still. He handed it to Miguel without a word. Miguel took it slowly, eyes tracing the stitching on the back, the lion. He folded it and placed it beside his glove. "I'm not him, Miguel." "You're not." Tommy was already in the ring, pacing like a predator. His followers lined the sides, shouting, laughing, betting. When Miguel walked out, the room hushed. He wore plain black trunks. No nickname, no theatrics, just purpose. Stallone followed behind him, like a shadow with weight. As the ref gave instructions, Tommy leaned in close. "You really think this ends with you on top?" Miguel stared back. "No, I think it ends with me standing." The bell rang. Tommy came in hot, a blur of jabs, hooks, feints. Miguel danced away, calm, eyes scanning. First round, defense, reading, breathing. Second round, counter-strikes, quick feet, testing the waters. Third round, Tommy got frustrated, sloppy. That's when Miguel hit back, clean and sharp, left hook, right cross. The crowd roared. By the fifth round, blood was on both their faces. Sweat flew with every strike. Breaths came heavy. The past and present collided in every blow. Rick watched from the corner, fists clenched. Stallone remained stone-faced. But Camilla, she prayed with her eyes open. Then, in the sixth, it happened. Miguel dodged a right hook, stepped in with perfect timing, and landed a shot that spun Tommy halfway around. Tommy stumbled, staggered, dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. He stood back up, barely, but his confidence was gone. The bell rang. Miguel walked back to his corner, sat down, breathing fire. Rick knelt beside him. "You're winning," he said. Miguel shook his head. "I'm still fighting." Rick frowned. "Tommy?" "No," Miguel whispered. "My father." And in that moment, Rick knew what had to be said. He knew. Miguel looked at him. "What?" "Your dad. He knew about his heart. He was warned. I told him. Stallone told him. The doctors told him. But he chose to fight anyway. He thought it was the only way to prove he was still a lion," Rick continued. "He thought walking away would mean giving up everything. He thought dying in the ring was better than fading outside it." The bell rang for the seventh round. Miguel didn't move. "You're not him," Rick said again, firmer this time. "You don't have to fight like he did. You don't have to die to matter." Miguel stood up slowly. He looked across the ring at Tommy, bloodied, breathing hard, furious. Then he looked past him, to the shadow of his father in the center of the ring. And then he stepped, not to fight, but to finish something much older than this. The seventh round wasn't about punches. It was about choice. Miguel didn't rush. He didn't flinch. He let Tommy come. And when the moment came to end it, when Tommy dropped his guard and Miguel had the cleanest shot of the night, Miguel stepped back. Rick stood up. Stallone raised an eyebrow. Tommy stared at him, confused. Miguel shook his... "I'm not here to knock you out," he said. "I'm here to stop fighting ghosts." The bell rang again. Match over. No knockout, no winner. But Miguel walked out taller than he'd ever been. Later, in the locker room, Tommy approached him. "You had me," he said. "Why'd you stop?" Miguel looked at him. "Because it wasn't about you." Tommy nodded slowly, wiped the blood from his lip, walked away without it. That night, Miguel sat on the rooftop of his building, overlooking the city lights. Camilla joined him, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "You did it," she said. He shook his head. "Not yet." "You didn't win?" "I didn't lose either." She smiled. "That's something." He looked up at the stars. He fought to prove he was still alive. "I fight to prove I've moved on." Camilla leaned against him. "Then maybe it's time to live instead of fight." Miguel didn't answer, but he didn't argue either. Down below, the pit closed for the night, but something had opened. A door, a name reclaimed, a legacy rewritten. The pit reopened the next week with one less photograph on the wall. The frame that held Arturo Rangel's blood-smeared victory shot. In its place was a new image, Miguel, mid-swing, eyes locked, chin lifted, wearing the gloves of a man he no longer needed to chase. Rick had done it himself, quietly. Stallone watched him from the office doorway. "Took you long enough," he said. Rick didn't answer. He just stared at the photo, then turned away. The gym felt different now. Not lighter, not cleaner, but honest. Like it had taken a breath after holding it for 10 years. Miguel still trained at dawn, but now others trained with him, out of pity. Not because Stallone said so, because they saw something they respected. Not perfection, not legend. Resilience, the kind that bleeds but never breaks. Tommy started showing up earlier too. Sometimes he didn't say a word. Sometimes he offered pointers. Other times he just watched. The rivalry had dissolved into something messier, something better. Mutual recognition. One afternoon, Stallone handed Miguel a slip of paper. "What's this?" Miguel asked. "Name, number, Vegas, a fight, nothing big, but real." Miguel stared at it. "You think I'm ready?" Stallone grinned. "Doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you do next." Miguel tucked the paper into his pocket, but something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, excitement, fear. That night he visited his father's grave. No cameras, no gloves, just him. The stone was modest, weathered, the letters fading. He knelt beside it. "I used to think I had to avenge you. Then I thought I had to forgive." He ran a hand across the top of the head. "But I don't have to do either. I just have to be me." He stood and walked away. A week later, he stood in the center of a small ring, a modest venue. Half-filled, no lights, just the sound of gloves tightening. Camilla was there, front row, fingers clenched, heart in her throat. Stallone sat behind her, sunglasses on indoors. Rick didn't come, but that didn't matter. Miguel's opponent was older, stronger, veteran of a dozen fights, the kind who didn't blink. But Miguel wasn't blinking either. The bell rang. First round, cautious. Second round, faster. Third round, bruises bloomed, and so did instinct. By the fifth, Miguel was breathing fire again. But then, a punch. Clean, hard. Miguel dropped, just for a moment. Knees touched canvas. The ref started counting. Miguel heard the crowd fade away. He heard his own breath. Then, a voice. Not his father's, Stallone's, from long ago. "You don't have to fight like him, you just have to stand." Miguel stood and kept fighting. By the seventh round, the crowd was with him. Every dodge, every jab, every swing, a heartbeat, a testimony. He didn't win. But when the decision was called and his name wasn't announced, Miguel didn't lower his head. He raised his gloves. The crowd applauded, and Camilla wept. Not because he lost, because he finally stopped running. Later in the locker room, as he laced his boots with bloodied fingers, Stallone stepped in. "You okay?" Miguel nodded. "I lost." Stallone sat beside him. "You stood back up. That's winning." Miguel looked at him. Was he proud of me? Stallone didn't answer at first. Then he smiled. He is now. Rick called the next day. Didn't leave a voicemail, just sent a picture. Miguel's glove, hanging beside his father. Different hooks, same wall. Back in Philly, the pit was busier than ever, but it wasn't the same gym. Now, the first thing people saw when they entered wasn't just bags or sweat or echoes. It was a photo. Miguel. Not knocking someone down, not standing over anyone, just standing. Still, bloody, smiling, alive. Camilla had taken it. Stallone had framed it. Rick had hung it. Years later, a boy walked into that same gym, nervous, shaking, name stitched into his shorts by his grand. He clutched a duffel bag like it was armor. Miguel was behind the counter now. He stood, walked around, and "First time?" he asked. The boy nodded. "You're gonna be fine," Miguel said. "Let me show you around." The boy looked up. "You're Miguel Rangel, right?" Miguel grinned. "Some days." The boy hesitated. "Didn't your dad?" Miguel nodded. "Yeah." "And you still box?" Miguel crouched to the boy's level. "I don't fight like he did. I fight like me." He led the boy into the gym, and somewhere, far in the back, a bell rang. Not for a round, but for a beginning. And this time, no one whispered, because now they knew. He walked into that gym like he didn't belong there. And by the time he left, he owned it. Thank you so much for watching. Your time means everything to us, and we hope this story moved you as much as it moved us. If it did, please consider leaving a comment, sharing the video, and subscribing to the channel, because powerful stories deserve to be heard. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never underestimate the impact of one small act of courage.